Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
So here's the story, X. It's short, but I still recall it to this day. The event happened when I was about 7 or 8, so about 18 to 19 years ago. My grandparents lived in an older neighborhood in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. As both of my parents were out of town on business, I had to stay at their house. Now, that house always have me the creeps since it was so old, and it had a lot of dark places and even a Home Alone tier laundry room. One night I was sleeping in bed, when all of a sudden I woke up. I sat up and looked across the room on the stool that was next to the door, and a woman dressed up in a late 18th, early 19th century dress was sitting on the stool, but her face was blank. I just stared at this faceless woman, frozen with fear. I didn't want to make a sudden move because I thought it would make her attack me. After a few moments, she stood up and I reacted by quickly laying down and quickly throwing the blanket over my head. I was now paralyzed not by fear, but some unknown force, most likely the presence of this unknown woman. I stayed under the blankets the rest of the night, too afraid to even peek. I eventually faded into sleep, which by no means happened quickly. Waking up in the morning being able to move again, I slowly peeled the covers away from my head and torso. There was nobody in the room. I got out of bed, went downstairs to eat breakfast, and never spoke a word of this haunting to anybody. Pick related, the look of the dress the faceless woman was wearing including the hat. Up here again, also sometime later, I was asleep in the very same room. I awoke to use the bathroom, which was only a few feet across the hall, but was drawn down to the laundry room by some sort of unknown curiosity. When I got into the basement and in the laundry room, the faceless woman was standing in front of the air conditioning unit reading a book. I was again most certainly awake and not dreaming in this instance as well. I bolted back upstairs, jumped quickly into bed, threw the covers over myself, and tried my hardest to close my eyes and sleep so that daylight would bring relief from this terrifying experience. I've never run into this terrifying, faceless woman since then, but I will always remember those 2 nights.
Alright/X/ I will need your help on this one. When I was around 5 to 6 years old, I lived in a relatively big house in a Hispanic country, Paraguay. It had 2 floors and a large yard, though it is probably smaller than I remember since I was a child. So my parents were taking a nap upstairs while I was by myself on the living room. The yard entrance was right in front of me. I was doing some childish shit, probably playing some video games, when I heard this woman's voice yelling, "Boy," like it was calling me. The voice was hard to describe, it sounded like a woman singing opera but without a melody. I got scared as fuck and run upstairs faster than I normally did, probably because of the adrenaline, and started beating the hell out of my parents' room door. And then, I heard it again. Loud and clear, but now coming from the stairs. It was fucking following me. I just freezes and then I started beating the door in complete despair, until my parents opened the door. I just asked my mom about it and she remembers that afternoon. It wasn't a fucking dream. The thing is that it was screaming in Portuguese. My first language, while I lived in a Hispanic country. It just couldn't have been someone yelling from the street or something. And just a small detail, every time I recall this memory, an image of a faceless blonde woman wearing a white dress comes to mind. No idea why, since I don't remember seeing anything, just hearing. Probably because I've seen this image in the corner of my eye. So tell me/X/, what the fuck did I hear? Pick kind of related to the image.
Be me at someone's house. Be with a group of a few people. We were actually walking past garages on an underground alleyway. In one of the storage rooms, I noticed there was literally one and only one classic school desk with a chair. When I pointed out that it was strange, I suddenly felt a change of air, and everybody was gone besides this one girl. Strangely enough, I didn't pay much attention to it. Suddenly, the scenario literally changes in seconds, and we are now inside the apartment following this girl inside a bedroom. She is facing directly into the wall, and while I'm about to enter, I felt thrown into the bed. This girl holds on to me. When I tried to understand what the fuck was going, it was too late. A faceless pitch black woman with long brown wavy hair was literally pinning me down on the bed from my shoulders as she was staring directly at my fucking face. I could not move any inch of my body besides hands and facial muscles. Even though she was faceless and pitch black, I could literally feel her staring directly inside me. What the fuck is going on? JPEG. I was trying to call for help with my cell phone and started to scream. Nobody answered while this woman kept staring at my face and did nothing else. I was not panic, just very fucking scared and confused, and felt everything was real in this dream. When I woke up, I felt heaviness on my shoulders, literally as if someone was holding me down. What in the actual fucking fuck? JPG. It took me about 2 hours to fall asleep again.
Despite having had a few weird experiences, I've never really believed in paranormal stuff until now. I had really bad alcohol intoxication and ended up in the hospital. The last thing I remember was a tall, pale faceless woman with light brown slightly grayish hair standing there as if she was watching us. My friend, whom I didn't tell anything about what I saw, texted me that she saw the exact same thing that I described here. I thought nothing of it. Like a month goes by and I'm on a bus, I look over, and I see the same thing again. Even though she had no face, it felt like she was watching me. I've had another friend randomly just tell me that they saw faceless people, without me telling him anything about this whole situation. The woman that I saw was tall, but not weirdly tall, probably around 190 centimeters or something. She was wearing a dress on both occasions, and it was like I couldn't look her in the face for too long. Has anyone ever experienced something like this? Also, English is not my first language, so I don't know if what I wrote is understandable. I just want to make clear that I don't have mental illnesses or hallucinations, nor do I take drugs.
There was a thread a while back, a long while back, where I mentioned that I would post some of the Japanese ghost stories from my copy of Quaden. Here is the shortest one, 2 pages long in the book. I will type up more if people are interested when I have the time. Here is the story of Mujina, or the Faceless. On the Akasaka Road in Tokyo, there is a slope called Kii no Kuni Zaka, which means the slope of the province of Kii. I do not know why it is called the slope of the province of Kii. On one side of this slope you see an ancient moat, deep and wide, with high green banks rising up to some place of gardens, and on the other side of the road extend the long and lofty walls of an imperial palace. Before the era of street lamps and jinrikishas, this neighborhood was very lonesome after dark, and belated pedestrians would go miles out of their way rather than mount the Kii no Kuni Zaka alone after sunset. All because of a Mujina that used to walk there. The last man who saw the Mujina was an old merchant of the Kayabashi quarter, who died about 30 years ago. This is the story as he told it. One night, at a late hour, he was hurrying up the Kii no Kuni Zaka, when he perceived a woman crouching by the moat, all alone and weeping bitterly. Fearing that she intended to drown herself, he stopped to offer her any assistance or consolation in his power. She appeared to be a slight and graceful person, handsomely dressed, and her hair was arranged like that of a young girl of good family. "O Jochu," he exclaimed, approaching her. "O Jochu" meaning, honorable damsel. "O Jochu, do not cry like that. Tell me what the trouble is, and if there be any way to help you, I shall be glad to help you." He really meant what he said, for he was a very kind man. But she continued to weep, hiding her face from him with one of her long sleeves. "Oh Jochu," he said again, as gently as he could, "please, please listen to me. This is no place for a young lady at night. Do not cry, I implore you. Only tell me how I may be of some help to you." Slowly she rose up, but turned her back to him and continued to moan and sob behind her sleeve. He laid his hand lightly upon her shoulder, and pleaded, "Oh Joshu. Oh Jochu. Oh Jochu. Listen to me, just for one little moment. Oh Jochu. Oh Jochu." Then that Oh Jochu turned around, and dropped her sleeve, and stroked her face with her hand. And the man saw that she had no eyes or nose or mouth, and he screamed and ran away. Up Kii no Kunizaka he ran, and all was black and empty before him. On he ran, never daring to look back, and at last he saw a lantern, so far away that it looked like the gleam of a firefly, and he made for it. It proved to be only the lantern of an itinerant soba seller who had set down his stand by the roadside. But any light and any human companionship was good after that experience, and he flung himself down at the feet of the soba seller crying out, "Ah! Ah! Ah! Kor! Kor!" roughly exclaimed the soba man. "Here, what is the matter with you? Anybody hurt you?" "No, nobody hurt me," panted the other, "only, ah, ah, only scared you?" queried the peddler, unsympathetically. "Robbers? Not robbers, not robbers," gasped the terrified man. I saw a woman by the moat. And she showed me. Ah! I cannot tell you what she showed me." "Was it anything like this that she showed you?" cried the soba man, stroking his own face, which therewith became like unto an egg, and simultaneously, the light went out.
I saw them a couple of times. Let me greentext my first encounter with them. I was 18. I was pretty depressed back in the day, and I was really tired because of the university stuff. I went to sleep very early. In my dream I saw 7 to 8 shadows around my bed. They didn't have any eyes or faces. I was still so calm. Shortly after, a woman in black appeared. She had parchment papers in her hand. I started chanting. "The mother of the faceless ones. The mother of the faceless ones." Then, she took one of her parchments and started doing something. I can't quite remember what she did. But afterwards they disappeared with a weird white light. Light came out of the window and went off in a second. I woke up. I was lying in the same position as in my dream. I got nervous. Got out of the house to take a fresh air. Couldn't see anything more this night. But afterwards I started seeing them in my normal life. If someone knows what this dream means, please let me know.
My theory is that they are an alternate Earth. And someone here suggested we might look like shadows to them as well. Here's a crazy thought. What if the girl you saw was a girl who had learned to bridge the gap? She is from the other Earth, but has learned how to project herself as a human. The other shadows are people in her cult, her followers, who call her mother of the faceless ones. But to them, you were a faceless one. They call her that because she can cross over completely to our world instead of just partially. So she is getting closer to us, the faceless ones, to them, than the other shadows. I don't know if that made sense. I have not had much sleep, but that is my theory. I think what you encountered was the other Earth equivalent of us. They see shadows, too, but to the rest of the world, they're crazies. So those people banded together and hang out, or they're all friends or something, and that girl is a lot more in tune with us than the rest of the shadows, since she can see us as non-shadows,
and we can see her as a non-shadow. It's like seeing someone through a cloth on a clothing line. We see their silhouette. We think they're the ones that are the silhouette, but to them, we're the silhouette. To the mother of the faceless ones, she can see that we're all human, on both earths, on both sides of the dimensions.
I really don't know. I just saw them a couple of times, and I thought that I was the only one who was experiencing it. After that dream, I started calling them the faceless ones. I didn't even know a lot of people had seen them. Also, they literally don't have a face. They are just shadows. Just imagine your shadow is walking freely and it's in a human shape completely. This is how they look like. They are not doing any harm to people, they are just standing and watching. At least, I think they are watching, because they don't have any eyes either. So you can't tell if they are watching or not. I also don't know who that woman was. She was like in her late 20s, long dark-haired, wearing a black dress, and I can't remember her face that much, but as far as I remember she was beautiful.
So, I've got a story that happened back in 2010, and right after I moved out of the house, I actually submitted the story, photos, other witness accounts in its full entirety to X. But it's been many years since then, and I highly doubt anyone here, especially not the small amount of people just on this thread currently, would recall any of it, but it is quite relevant, probably, so I'll share the rundown. A girlfriend of mine and a few friends decided to all get a place together, and we found a nice house for rent that was pretty cheap despite the nice neighborhood it was located in. We met with the owners of the property, and a few weeks later we all moved in. Everything was really great for a while. Little did we know eventually things were going to get pretty weird. At first it was stuff like our dog being scared shitless of the long hallway. It simply wouldn't go down that hallway unless you walked right down it with him, and he would whine the whole time. It took him months to finally get over it, but the same behavior repeated again when we got a new dog about 5 months into living in this place. After a while, my roommate started complaining about hearing shit at night and little things out of the ordinary, such as things being moved, or bad feelings in the house. Me being of complete skeptical mind, and living my whole life by the moral creed of logic and reasoning, chalked it up to my roommates being friends and the pipes were clanking, etc. It wasn't too long, however, until I found myself home alone one day, and all the creepy shit really began. So my girlfriend and myself were home alone one day while the others were at work, and we hear something fall in the house. Sounds like the hall bathroom to me. She thinks it's one of the bedrooms. I go to check the bathroom and see nothing really amiss. She, however, goes across the hall from me and tries to open our roommate's door, and she starts to freak out. She can twist the knob but cannot open the door, and she thinks someone is holding it closed on the other side. I come up behind her and try as well. The door doesn't budge much. I shout that if someone is there, they should tell me now, because regardless I'm coming into the room. A small door won't stop me, 6 foot 5 inches tall, weighing about 250 pounds. A tiny prefab door won't really keep me out. Nobody replies, and so I try again to open it. I get a little more budge and it feels like it's being held at the bottom. So I wiggle it around more and eventually I feel the door dislodge something, finally getting my head through the crack. I can see it's a hanging mirror that had been there when we got the place. It had previously been drilled into the wall about a foot off the ground, and it had seemingly come undone, and fell, slid about 4 feet and perfectly wedged the door closed. It was sure odd considering I still can't really picture how the mirror could get over there, be face up, and have all the screws in it still, but I chalked it up to the cosmic lottery of probability, and thought nothing of it. Later that day after the girlfriend goes to work, I hear my car locking and unlocking itself, and I think I must be sitting on my key fob. I look and don't find it, and happen to see it on my desk, and as soon as I look at the fob, the car locks itself again. I can hear the honk and see the lights flash through my dining room window. I think my fob needs new batteries. The fob never got those batteries replaced though, and it worked just fine before and since until the car was literally set on fire and junked a few years ago. After this went on, all of which didn't even at the time strike me as odd, I took a shower to get ready for lunch with a buddy of mine. Once I was out and drying off, I could hear my water still flowing. All the pipes were loud and they all ran off the same line, thus you could hear them from any of the bathrooms or kitchen, and thinking someone was home, I toweled off a bit and went out. Once out I heard my kitchen sink going full blast. I called out but was met with silence. As soon as I approached the corner to turn into the kitchen the water stopped hard, like I could hear the valve, coughing, into place as the faucet shut off. Rounding into the kitchen there was water in my sink and some had splashed onto the floor. I thought the plumbing was fucked or the shower backed up somehow. In hindsight gravity and things tell me this is highly unlikely since other bath faucets were seated much lower than the kitchen sink. I thought it was odd but in a rush I turned around to walk to the room to get dressed. Walking back to the room I got 5 feet from my room door and it just slammed in my face. At this point, I pretty much lost a bit of my skepticism. From here on out very strange things happened in the house, almost more often than not while I was around, though many times with multiple people seeing things too. Unexplained sounds, glasses shattering, doorknobs turning by themselves, just way more things than can be listed here. Unless someone really wants it, but then, the well entity shows up. One day just before our lease was coming up, it was 8 p.m., and I'm outside with the 2 dogs. The girlfriend is home, and I had just got off the phone with another roommate discussing future living arrangements. So I'm watching the dogs do what dogs do, and it's a nice enough evening outside. Sun has been down for about an hour or so, and I hear this sound, like a leaf scraping the pine needles, nothing out of the ordinary, but it has the effect of a dead leaf scraping asphalt, just enough noise that you turn and look at it. Now when I turn and I look at this sound it had come from the corner of my fence, and there in the corner right up perfectly where the edges meet there is a figure. Maybe a little shorter than me, and we're only about 40 feet apart. I cannot make out a face, or really anything, but it kind of looks like a man in hoodie had hopped my fence and was just standing there. I thought it was burglar or something so I back up slowly on my porch and call for the dogs to go inside. Contrary to everything I've heard, the dogs did not even act like this thing existed at all whatsoever, just walked around and never noticed it. Either that or they were treating it like it was a person they had seen quite often before and were not put off by. And as the dogs go in, I walk backwards the whole time and step inside the threshold of the house, never taking my eyes off the figure, the entire time. As I shut the door has 9 window panes in it, 3 by 3 making up the majority of the back door and we keep a curtain over it to block out the morning sun. I pull the door curtain back to grab the deadbolt to lock, and as soon as I pull the curtain aside, I am greeted by the figure no more than 2 feet away from the door on the other side, standing on the porch. I didn't know how it moved roughly 200 feet in less than a full second of time. I'd gone into protect my house mode by this time. So I do the dumbest thing I can. Stand and wait. I flick the porch light on and am just standing there, watching it. I notice a few things. The first and most apparent thing is that what I'm staring at has no apparent features. None. It's roughly humanoid, with the basic shape of a person but there is no muscle definition, there is no face, there are no fingers, no toes, no clothes. The head is more like a blob hood on top of a body, and the whole thing is flat matte black. Solid as concrete. Looked like a fucking statue. The second thing I become aware of after a few moments staring is there is no respiration. In fact, there is no movement of any kind. To this day I have never seen it move. I stared at it through my window for what seems like forever, but in reality was still probably 30 full seconds. Behind the curtain I reached my arm out to grab a large knife off the top of the dog kennel and as I let the curtain finally fall I unsheathed the knife and jumped a bit back from the door, waiting for it to come crashing in. It did not. I was a little shook up about it, but my normal reaction to all the weird shit that ever happened has been anger. I don't meet creepy situations with a scared response or run away. I run into danger and tend to become violent at these actions. In any case, though, I didn't like seeing this thing at my house, but couldn't bring myself to tell the girlfriend. I ended up leaving and going to the store. Later that night at almost 4 a.m., while I was going to bed, I was walking down the long hall and stopped in front of my door. I looked down the hall to our front door to watch as I clicked the lights off, and there it was. Standing in front of my front door. Same pose, no motion, just standing, its perfectly stillness. I flicked the light on and off to try and dispel it, but nothing happened. It just stayed put. I noped opened my door, and slid into my room, jumped into bed, and waited with a gun in my hand all night till the sun rose before finally passing out. I wish that was the last time, but it's not. Apart from that incident and after moving houses, I've seen it in 3 different homes now, and one time around Xmas last year a buddy of mine and myself had gone out for a smoke, and he motions over to a house on the bend, saying, "Hey man, is that a guy over there?" And sure enough, it appears to be a silhouette of a man up near the house. It's so convincing that I even called out to it, and started to approach it. Maybe halfway to it, when I eventually decided it probably was not a man, but just a weird trick of the street lighting on the house. However, about 10 minutes later we look over and realize that the shadow is no longer there, but we had never seen anyone move away or down the road or anything. He'd heard some of the stories before and he became much more freaked out than I was, as he was positive he's now seen this thing that has seemingly followed me for over 5 years now. Not quite sure if it's what constitutes a classical shadow person, but it's as close as I have to some form of account with it. Thing is, it always felt bad for me. Like all the events happening at that old house were always things that were by design meant to fuck with your head. And the house always had this sterile feeling to it, like you were the dirt and it was trying to cleanse the place. Anyways, thanks for listening, and I guess I'll answer questions if anyone has any.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.